What's up again, guys? Brian here at 3TR, and I'm here to give you guys my next top 10 video, and this time I'll be going over my top 10 favorite movies of all time. Now this list was really hard to kind of come together because there's a lot of movies that I would consider in their own class are my favorite in that particular genre. So there are a couple of honorable mentions, as for this one, a couple that I will leave in the description. So this list is probably 11 movies in 10 subjects. So here we go. My number 10 favorite movie of all time is Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Now, I don't really care what any of you guys say out there. You can bash episodes 1 and 2 all you want, but I will defend episode 3 to my dying breath, because that movie for me really made me actually care about the Star Wars universe, and if it really wasn't for that movie, I wouldn't have been interested in the expanded universe, which most Star Wars fans probably don't dwell in much. Their knowledge is usually just between the movies and maybe a couple of games. I do think that the originals are good on their own terms and probably good for its time, but I don't think that has held up over the past 40 years. I've seen plenty of movies which make Star Wars look completely inferior. As for number 9, which is my number 9 film, is Star Trek from 2009, which is the reboot from J.J. Abrams. This was another sci-fi movie that actually made me a big fan of the franchise in general. I generally didn't really care too much about Star Trek, and I will acknowledge that before I saw this film, I guess my favorite Star Trek film was probably Wrath of Khan. But I think this one worked more for me because it was kind of the Star Trek movie of my generation, so it connected more with me than Wrath of Khan did, although that too was also another great film. It just didn't connect with me as much as 2009 Star Trek. Number 8 is going into spy films, and in that case, my favorite in that category is GoldenEye, which is also the movie off of my all-time favorite first-person shooter game of all time, the game GoldenEye. Now, I would like to state right now that in overall, I do think that Skyfall is a much better James Bond film. It's just not my personal favorite. This was the first James Bond film I had ever seen, and I still have yet to see a James Bond film that has really impressed me as much as GoldenEye. It just has all the right cues. It has the right amount of humor. It goes to some really serious elements. It does have that kind of preposterous idea of technology using a giant satellite to shoot an EMP to kind of do the whole thing. And I think Alec, who was, I believe, 009 or 008 or 006, I think he's kind of one of the, I think I would put him as one of my top 5 favorite Bond villains of all time. Number 7 is probably my favorite Russell Crowe film of all time, and that is Gladiator. I'm a really big history buff, and I think one of my all-time favorite time periods is definitely the Roman era, simply because there were so many ups and downs, and I think that the movie Gladiator really solidified what was Rome all about at the time, just how corrupt it was and how a few good men with good morals were really able to change the direction of really the Roman people in general, and it just shows just how much power a government's people actually has, and that still stands today. I mean, I know many of us wouldn't think that we have a voice in the direction of governmental, policies, but I think that if the people really did rise up to any government, then we would really show the world just what kind of power the American people have, and we have seen that in the past. Number 6 was really difficult because it deals with war, and it's between 2 movies. I'm sorry, guys, I honestly cannot decide which one I like more, and it's a tie between Saving Private Ryan and Black Hawk Down. I have no idea which one I would watch more. It would just be a flip of the coin. I love Saving Private Ryan because it does deal with World War II, and I absolutely am fascinated by the types of battles and tactics and story elements that went through for World War II. As I've said before, I'm a big history buff, so I usually will watch a lot of History Channel, and I've seen World War II HD. I've seen show called Dogfights, which pretty much go over the fights that happened in World War II, and even Battle 360, which went over kind of the Pacific Battle in World War II. I know this was on the European side, but I just think the whole world of World War II in general is very interesting, as opposed to Black Hawk Down, which as kind of the modern day warfare movie, which, you know, World War II, that's how it was done back then. Black Hawk Down, that's how it's done today. And battles today, those are very interesting as well. They still have just as many interesting twists, turns, up and down, emotional events that happen, and I think that's going to stay true throughout all times of warfare. So, those two. My number 5 favorite film is Die Hard. If you're a big action fan, you have to have Die Hard. It's probably the original, classic, great action film of all time. It's still my favorite Die Hard of all of the films. And it really was the movie that made Bruce Willis probably be part of the group in which I call the big 3 action legend stars, which, you know, are also added of Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger. I definitely think Bruce Willis is my favorite out of all 3 of them. And it's just the perfect movie of a, you know, a guy who has all the odds stacked against him, just using his wits and his whatever he can get a hold of to kind of take on a terrorist threat. And I think it's very well filmed, executed, and just probably the perfect action film of all time. Number 4 is Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Lord of the Rings was very interesting. I've seen all of them in theaters. I don't really necessarily like the direction that they want to do with The Hobbit, although I did think The Hobbit was a really great film. But Lord of the Rings just was able to bring everything together. It had its epic battles, it had its emotional connections, it had its up and down moments, it had its, you know, having to overcome things even when things looked like it was hopeless. Although I do think the ending was a bit too long. It was kind of like 5 or 6 different endings, but it did wrap up all the characters perfectly. I wouldn't say it's the best ending to a series. I'm going to save that one for like another movie coming up. But I do think it's probably one of the best endings out of all series trilogies. I would even say it has a much better ending than even Star Wars did. Number 3 is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Now, I'm not sure if I would really count Part 1 and Part 2 as one movie in general, because I actually could watch them back and forth. I think they should make a version where it's just both those two combined. But if I had to separate them, then I think the second half is definitely better. This is Harry Potter's final battle with Voldemort. This is the finale of my generation. Many have considered it to be the Star Wars of this generation, and that's absolutely true. And it was actually, next to movies, was really the first book series that I ever actually enjoyed reading. It actually got me into reading. So, be able to read it in the books and then actually see it play out in film was just an amazing experience. It was actually the first movie I actually went to a midnight premiere with a couple of friends of mine, and so that's definitely one of the most memorable moments I've ever had going to the movies. So, Harry Potter. Number 2 is probably my favorite James Cameron movie, which is Terminator 2. There is not enough to be said as for how amazing Terminator 2 is. It's arguably one of the best sequels of all time. It goes over so many important elements involving life and, you know, human emotion and human life and how important it is. And it's kind of an amazing development to see a killing machine such as the Terminator kind of learn the value of human life, and he's willing to go much further to protect it than even us humans. And that's just kind of an amazing 180 in terms of you take something that was designed to do one thing and it risks everything to do the exact opposite for an even nobler cause. Even, I mean, what more can be said? I still think it's Arnold Schwarzenegger's best performance by far. And number 1. Now, I know many of you are probably going to think, oh, is it any of the Dark Knight films? Is it a Christopher Nolan film? Yes, it's a Christopher Nolan film. No, it is not going to be any of the Batman films. But if I had to pick one, I would pick Inception. I was completely blown away by Inception, and I absolutely to this day state that I do think it's slightly better than The Dark Knight, which is probably my favorite out of all 3 of those films, simply because it was somewhat an original idea, and I think it was such a mind-challenging movie that you had to see multiple times. And I actually ended up seeing it 3 times in theaters, and every time I saw it, I learned more about how the world worked. It was able to establish its own rules. The characters were all played their part. They weren't just there, let's take up space. They all had a purpose. There was great character development. There was definitely great emotional scenes. And it really dwells into something that we all do every night when we go to sleep. We all dream. And so the fact that they were able to take something that we all experience and kind of make an entire world and established how the rules of it worked was just an amazing accomplishment in terms of script writing and ideas for Hollywood, and overall it stands out as my all-time favorite movie. And with that, that is my top 10 movies of all time. Now, there are a bunch of other ones which I'll leave in the description down below so you can see some honorable mentions. And tell me, what are some of your guys' all-time favorite movies? Because I'd really like to know. So you can comment down below and let me know so I can comment and talk to you guys about it, so I can really see just how, you know, vast of your guys' experience with movies are. And if you like this video, please like, comment down below, and please subscribe to keep track of me in my future movie and video game reviews, along with top 10 videos, which I'll be uploading every week. And like always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.